The young power puncher with something to prove. The GOAT of the heavyweight division. This is Usyk versus Dubois.
Make sure y'all stay on point with the puncher's point. Welcome back to the puncher's point. Again, July 19th, very busy day for boxing. It's a very busy day for boxing. It's so busy I had to take the weekend off of work just to see the card and then to make all these episodes. It's going to be a long day, a very, very long day. But regardless, we're going to try to cover as much as we can on July 19th. A big fight for the heavyweight division, a very important fight for the heavyweight division. We got Usyk versus Dubois 2. Oleksandr Usyk versus Daniel Dubois, Wembley Stadium for the undisputed heavyweight championships. Now, to kind of give everybody a recap, Usyk was once undisputed heavyweight champion. Something happened where he had to get vacated or stripped him of the IBF belt. Dubois and Anthony Joshua had that fight, and a fight where a lot of people thought Anthony Joshua was going to be the one to win. Daniel Dubois pulls the upset, knocks Anthony Joshua flat out, and here we are with Usyk versus Dubois 2, and Dubois has been waiting for this one for a long time. You go back and you look at that first fight, and we talk about the body shot / low blow, whichever way you want to look at it. We talk about that one shot that dropped Usyk, and overall, it was counted as a low blow. Fight continued. Usyk would end up finishing Daniel Dubois. Fun fact, actually, Daniel Dubois is the only guy in the heavyweight division that Usyk has knocked out since becoming a heavyweight. So overall, it's a very, very interesting matchup when we go look at it. But again, listen, I can't do this alone. I got to introduce a very good friend of mine. You know, we had 4 years in high school to just debate all this boxing stuff. And now here he is again, coming full circle. Again, a boxing debate, it's been due. And overall, I'm proud to introduce him. Ladies and gentlemen, my guy, Anthony Cucinotta. Anthony, introduce yourself to the audience before we kick right into this episode.
Thank you for having me on. I've been looking forward to this. I started boxing about 14 years old. So it's been about 10 years that I've been in and out of the gyms, in and out of watching fights. And like Mario said, we had a hot 4 years in high school every morning, debating boxing. So, you know, it's about time that it comes full circle and we do an episode together. So I appreciate it.
1000%. I believe back then I was a Wilder fan. He was a Fury fan, and that was the craziest one of all. That was the craziest one of all, especially when those two. Because at that time, I don't think they were scheduled to fight at all. I think Fury was making his comeback. I believe Deontay Wilder was WBC champion. He was defending it against a bunch of these guys, and then eventually they had to fight. And overall, it was a good 4 years. You know, so many great debates. But here we are to do it again, and this time on YouTube. So with that being said, we're gonna kick right into it. Oleksandr Usyk. Let's start off with him. We're gonna start off with the strengths for Oleksandr Usyk. So you know what? Let me pass that on to you, Anthony. Give me some of the strengths for Oleksandr Usyk that you feel are the most important in this fight.
You know, when you think of Usyk, the one thing that comes to mind is that footwork. It's something that's embedded into that Ukrainian amateur system. You can see the same thing with Lomachenko. They came up through the same system, and it's no exception for Usyk. That footwork is real deal, especially in the heavyweight division. It's definitely a problem. I think a huge advantage that Usyk has in this fight, particularly as well, is the prior win against Dubois. So when you have a style like Usyk, who's very technical, who's going to really use his mind and is going to make it a chess match, when you get into a rematch, the rematch always favors that guy, the guy who's a little bit more technical. And lastly, just with Usyk's style, it's the mental pressure that he puts on you. So if you notice, even with Lomachenko, there's a lot of feints, a lot of body feints, a lot of movement. And if you're not prepared for that as their opponent, you start noticing yourself get really fatigued, and the other guy hasn't even thrown a punch yet. There's a lot of mental fatigue, which translates into physical fatigue, which obviously is going to play a crucial role in the second half of the fight.
100%. And the thing is, the truth is about Oleksandr Usyk, especially, I feel like the biggest advantage that he had was coming from cruiserweight to heavyweight. And the reason why I say that is because when you have that advantage, you were too quick for the cruiserweights to begin with, and you were just laying them all out, tearing them all apart. And then you go over to the heavyweight division. There was obviously a lot of speculation and skepticism about, well, is he going to be able to do it in a bigger weight class where these guys are weighing 250, 260 pounds? And then all of a sudden, he starts picking up wins against guys like Chisora, Dubois. And then they ask, well, can he do it against Tyson Fury? And he goes in there and he has those 2 fights with Tyson Fury and he picks up the 2 wins against Tyson Fury. So he's overall been proven that he can handle heavyweight pretty well, especially against somebody like Anthony Joshua too. Those are 2 very tough fights for him to win. But overall, he's adjusted to the heavyweight division relatively well. And what I will say is for me, one of the biggest strengths, you obviously mentioned the biggest one was footwork. I really like his jab. For me, I feel like that jab is the setup for everything. You mentioned how he's very good with feints, and I believe every single combination that he throws, every single feint that he throws, it all starts with that jab. That jab, it just seems like it is the punch to set up everything else. And the truth is with Oleksandr Usyk, it's a very hard jab to stop. It's a very hard jab to stop because the thing is with Usyk, he's not throwing these jabs to knock guys down. He's not throwing jabs to like he's not even throwing it to really establish like anything crazy. It's like he's just knocking on the door. It's little taps. Like these jabs don't hurt. They're just little taps. And then he's basically using those little taps to kind of open up. He's knocking on the door. He's throwing them high to knock on that door. Then all of a sudden they open it up, and then all of a sudden you get hit with some type of hook. You get hit with a straight. You get hit with an overhand. I mean, he's very meticulous. He's very smart, but everything starts with that jab. He's very good at cutting angles, and I think one of the best examples of that was that Derek Chisora fight, where he was fighting Derek Chisora. Derek Chisora was applying pressure on him, and there would be moments where Chisora would throw a punch. Next thing you know, Usyk's behind him, and he would have to turn around. He had very good success with cutting angles on Tyson Fury. He had good success against Anthony Joshua. That's, to me, part of that footwork. He's so good at cutting angles. He's so good at basically just luring opponents into certain situations and then flipping the script on them. I will say that. He's very good at disguising his punches. You really don't see what Usyk's gonna throw. It's not like it's right there, like, oh, here comes the hook, and he throws it. You don't know. That's the truth. You don't know. He's very good at disguising. He's very good at hiding his cards. And to me, that was one of the biggest things in a lot of these fights that he had, especially even the Dubois fight that got him that win. He was very good at disguising those types of punches. We obviously saw the jab coming, but everything else after that jab, you never knew what it was. He fights at his own pace. That's the truth. He fights at his own pace. Whatever fight he's in, you're going to fight at Usyk's pace. And that pace is kind of hard to fight at. It's not a insanely fast pace. It's not an insanely slow pace. He mixes it up a little bit. Sometimes you look at it and it's like, wow, this is a slow fight. Then all of a sudden he really picks up that speed. All of a sudden guys are forced to go from really trying to figure him out, basically having the time to think and see what he's going to do, all of a sudden to with a snap of a finger, now you got to get back on defense. Now you got to make sure that you keep him in your sight. You got to make sure that he doesn't use his ring. He doesn't use that type of offense to get you frustrated. And then last but not least, he's very elusive. It's not just cutting angles. It's even when he's just standing right in front of you. Again, very good head movement. He's very good at just being elusive, making you think that you have a good shot at him, and then when you go to throw, it's not there. So for me, those would be the biggest strengths for Oleksandr Usyk. So now, with all that being said, there's not many weaknesses with this guy, but there are some. There are some. Hey, there's no such thing as a perfect fighter. We're going to talk about those weaknesses. So Anthony, let me pass that right back on to you. What are some of the weaknesses for Oleksandr Usyk that you could potentially see Daniel Dubois exploiting?
It's funny that you say that because I was thinking that when I was looking for his weaknesses. I'm like, he really is the closest thing to a complete fighter. He's gonna do a little bit of some things better than he does others, but it doesn't mean that those other things are necessarily bad. So when I was really thinking of the weaknesses, a couple came to mind, and they're really not so skill based. It's more of the fact that he's not a natural heavyweight. I think that's a big weakness. Even though he's proven himself at heavyweight, you can see each fight the toll it takes on him, even though he wins and wins quite comfortably. Let's be honest. You see the stories that circulate after the fight of him spending nights at the hospital, and it's just not a natural weight class for him, and that damage does take a toll on you. So it remains to be seen if he has any more of that in him. I'm sure he does. But the more you step up against these bigger guys, I mean, heavyweights today, you're looking at 6'7", 6'8". I mean, these guys are huge. The more you step up against them, it puts miles on the clock. And like I'm saying, miles on the clock. He's had a very long amateur career. He's had some pretty big fights. Fought Anthony Joshua twice, fought Tyson Fury twice, fought Dubois. So, I mean, he's been in a lot of tough fights, and he's had a long amateur career. I just wonder how much longer can he keep that up before it starts to take an effect and he starts to backpedal a little bit. I don't think we're going to see it in this fight, but it's definitely something to watch out for because fighters can age overnight. We've seen it all the time. Fighters on top of the world, and then they come in and they age right overnight. So I think when I'm thinking of weaknesses, I necessarily, like you said, there's always something that can be improved on in your style, but it's very hard to pick out a weakness with Usyk, especially in this fight, because quite honestly, I think he's superior in every skill set aside from natural physical advantages. I think he's superior in every single skill that he has. So I really couldn't pick out a weakness aside of the fact that he's not a natural heavyweight and he does have a lot of miles on the clock.
Be honest with you, there's one weakness that just stands out every single fight. His body. That to me is the biggest weakness. His body. I mean, to me, it just don't seem like he can take a body shot. It just doesn't seem like he can. And you can go, it's not even just something that happened recently. Like, it's not even just with Dubois. Tyson Fury hurt him a little bit in the body. Go back to his amateur career when he was fighting Beterbiev. Beterbiev, who's a light heavyweight at 175 pounds, I think dropped him with a body shot. He got back up and he fought. But I'm just saying, like, that body, and you're wondering, like you said, it's taking a toll on his body. You can tell that it's getting a little bit exhausting being in this weight class. So you got to ask, when is it going to take the perfect body shot, or when is it really going to deplete? His body's not going to get better from this. Like, it's not like he's going to walk into this fight. If he walks into this fight and he just takes a body shot and just smiles at the guy, I'll be genuinely shocked. And he doesn't get hurt. I can't see that happening. I mean, honestly, that body's a liability for him. And I think it's the only way, and I mean the only way you can finish him. The other thing I will say, if there's anything, I will say he has a little bit trouble with slick boxers. The guys who had the most success against him was guys like Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury. Even though I do believe he defeated Tyson Fury, even though I do believe he defeated Anthony Joshua, they were slick boxers. They had their moments. I mean, those fights, one Anthony Joshua fight was a split decision, I believe. You go to the Tyson Fury fight, I believe, I don't know if both of those, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if both of those ended in UD. I think one of them might have had a split decision. I think the first one might have. But basically, those are close fights, and I'm not saying Anthony Joshua is like the slickest fighter, but in that fight, Anthony Joshua, he did look like a very good complete boxer. The only thing was, when Usyk really put that offense on him, it frustrated him. When Usyk put that offense on Tyson Fury, it frustrated him. But overall, those guys, they had a good boxing game plan against him. And then what I will say is recently it was one of the weaknesses, but I really loved the way that Tyson Fury would throw that uppercut against him because it wasn't, again, it was something that he wasn't showing. His hand was all the way down, and then all of a sudden you could just see it pop up and it would clip Oleksandr Usyk. So I do think that uppercut is definitely something that could frustrate Usyk. And then last but not least, especially in the Tyson Fury fights, and even a little bit in the Anthony Joshua fights, what I noticed was he has trouble with guys who can land quick two-punch combinations. I feel like if you're just going to stand there and basically try to trade with him, get into the inside, try to hurt him, you're not going to have much success. I mean, he's going to know how to use that, and you're going to have a lot of great pressure on him in order to really make it a difficult fight. And Anthony knows one of my favorite fighters is Roy Jones Jr. And Roy Jones Jr., I believe it was Roy. He was talking to Andre Ward on their podcast that they got, and he was saying the weakness that he has is when you basically interrupt that footwork and you go to the inside. And I'm like, Roy, I love you, but that's not how you're beating Usyk. It's just not. And the reason why is because we saw Chisora try to do it. It didn't work. He's gonna know how to avoid that. That's how he wins. And to me, the only time I really seen him have struggles was when you stayed on the outside and you threw quick 2-3 punch combinations. When Tyson Fury would just stay on the outside, use his range, and hit him with a jab or hit him with some 2-3 punch combinations. That, to me, you're gonna have to make it a technical fight in order to beat him. And there's not many technical boxers that are better than him. But if you can find some that could have some good rounds against him, basically kind of take some type of momentum, you do have a chance to beat this guy. So for me, those were the weaknesses I would have for Usyk. But overall, this is a really hard guy to beat. And so, with that being said, we go straight into Daniel Dubois. This is a guy who dropped Usyk with a low blow / body shot. First, I'm going to ask you, do you believe that in that first fight, was it a low blow or was it a body shot? I want your opinion on that because that's always been controversial. And then right after you say that, basically get into your strengths for Daniel Dubois.
Personally, I think it was a low blow. It was right on the cusp. It definitely, I can see people that say it was a body shot, but I don't pay too much mind to it because I think Usyk has more than rectified or redeemed that reputation of himself with the last two Tyson Fury fights. Because, like you said, Fury invested into that body, and it did. You could see it did bother Usyk, but not the same effect. So I think until Usyk legitimately gets stopped with the body shot, he's shut my mouth with those two Tyson Fury fights for sure. But jumping into the strengths of Dubois, funny enough, I do think that body shot or that low blow, however you want to say it, I do think that's a strength for him because nobody in the professional game has been able to do that to Usyk. Whether it was a low blow or a body shot, however you see it, the bottom line is Dubois landed a punch that caused that type of pain on Usyk, and I'm sure he believes it was a body shot deep down in his heart. I don't think he thinks it was a low blow. And I think if you can carry that mental edge into the fight, knowing that you can hurt Usyk, I think you're always going to have hope. Even if you're getting outboxed, let's say it's the 10th round and you've just been getting outboxed the whole fight, you're still going to have that hope like, hey, I can hurt this guy. And I think that hope is what makes Dubois dangerous in this fight, especially in the face of danger himself. Like we saw with Anthony Joshua, he can hurt you when he's hurt. That's a dangerous fighter to beat. You have to be very careful with that. Among other things, I think his size can play a factor. It hasn't worked so far against Usyk. All the opponents have been bigger than him and hasn't worked so far. But I think if Dubois can really impose his size, really impose the fact that I can hurt Usyk and stick and commit to that, I think you could be looking at a rough night for Usyk. And I think that's how Dubois manages a lot of success. When you get into this heavyweight division, when you have someone who can move like Usyk, you're not going to have many opponents that are able to do the same things. It's not like when you're at a lighter weight and, you have someone like a Lomachenko, but it balances with the Teofimo and they can move equally but differently. You're in the heavyweight division. Dubois' feet aren't as fast. He's not as elusive. He's not as agile. He's not as mobile. So when you have someone like Usyk that can do all these things, you better be able to hurt Usyk. You better have that in your bag. And I think Dubois, in his heart, really believes that he can hurt Usyk, and I think that's going to help him in this fight.
See, now this is where the debate begins. I'm not gonna lie to you. I think it was a body shot. I think it was barely a body shot. And I will say that. And the only reason why I say that is because of the belt line. And it's really tough because that belt line, it's not the most accurate measurement. Hey, look, I'm sure he got more than a little bit of a body. I'm sure in that punch, he got a little bit more of a body. Don't get me wrong. But that belt line, it looked like it was right barely on that belt line before it would even be considered low, for me at least. But that's as close as a body shot / low blow as you can get. That's even though he might have not meant to aim directly at that place, that's some good accidental accuracy right there. Because it's like centimeters, to what you would call to what anybody would think the line is. It's just too close to call. I think a lot of people, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I think personally it was a body shot, but I think a lot of people call it a body shot not for the right reasons. I think they call it a body shot because they wanted to see an upset. I feel like that fight happened near Ukraine, and with everything that was going on at that time, I feel like they want to call it a body shot because they're like, oh, here's Usyk, he just got dropped, he should be defeated, Dubois should be the guy. But at the same time, let's not this whole fight, it wasn't like Dubois was winning on the cards before that happened. He was losing on the cards. And let's not, and again, it's your job as a boxer when things don't go right, keep your head in the game, keep your head on a swivel, and basically get through it. And he didn't get through it. He was too adamant about that being a body shot, and it just seemed like Usyk took over. But we're talking about the strengths of Daniel Dubois. For me, the first thing that comes to my mind is power. He does got power. He does got pop in his punch. I will say that, and I mean, this is a guy that is a very, very dangerous puncher, especially when it comes to the body. You mentioned the body shots already. I mean, I do believe that he is a dangerous body puncher, not because of what he did to Usyk, but if you go back to some of his other fights that he had and some of the other wins that he had, he's knocked some guys out to the body. I think he's an underrated boxer. I feel like people just look at Daniel Dubois and they think like, this guy could be and he's got to beat, it doesn't seem like he's too much, but nah. Daniel Dubois is an underrated boxer, in my opinion. I do believe that he's got a lot of skills that people don't know about. And I do believe he's only getting better from here. And I think that Anthony Joshua fight proved it. Again, even as underrated as he was in the past, I couldn't see him setting up something that clean in the past. I do feel like he was rough around the edges, but I always thought he was underrated when it came to his actual boxing ability. Very versatile. power in both hands, knock you down to the body, knock you up high. Basically, he's a guy who's just very versatile. He can hurt you in many different ways, and I do think that's something that Usyk's gonna have to watch out for. Great pressure, high volume puncher. I do like the way he sets up punches, especially now, especially in that Anthony Joshua fight. Now, don't get me wrong. If we go back and you look at that knockout with Anthony Joshua, he threw the same punch 3 times. Usyk's not doing that. He's not throwing the same punch 3 times because that's 3 shots to get it right. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think Usyk is that predictable in my opinion. So I don't think that's gonna happen. But I do think he's very good at setting up punches. I do think he's very good at finding openings to land. Got a great left hook. If I'm going to point to one punch from Daniel Dubois, even though he's got power in both of his hands, I do think that left hook might be his most dominant punch. Very good with feints, and he's very good at level change. He's very good at switching between going high and low. I do believe he's very good at switching those types of levels, and that's what makes him so versatile. And now we go to the weaknesses. He didn't just lose to Usyk. He lost to Joyce in early in his career. So overall, what were some of the weaknesses that you picked up on Daniel Dubois that Usyk can exploit?
Yeah, I think honestly with Dubois, I think he's just a little bit too easy to hit for someone like an Oleksandr Usyk. You got a guy who can throw combination punches in Usyk. You know, he might not be the most powerful, but he's accurate. And accuracy sometimes can be even better than power because you don't need to throw the hardest shot to get a guy out of there. So you take the fact that Usyk's a combination puncher and he's got accuracy with the fact that I think Dubois' elusiveness in his defense is sort of a weakness for him. I think you're looking at Dubois getting caught with a lot of unnecessary shots if he were to have an appropriate defense. I think he's going to get caught with a lot of left hands, a lot of combinations. I think that's one of the biggest things in Dubois that I see. And then also his footwork. You know, it's not very common for heavyweights to have this stellar footwork, but Daniel Dubois does have some pretty slow feet. Might not be a problem against other heavyweights, but you're fighting Oleksandr Usyk, who does have very fast feet, especially for a heavyweight. And if you take someone who has stellar footwork and you take someone who doesn't have good footwork, 9 times out of 10, the boxer with the better footwork is going to win because you know that's some of the most important aspects of the game is footwork. So I think his slow feet and his inability or his lack of defense, especially at certain times, I think it's going to see him in a lot of trouble.
I think there's questions about Daniel Dubois' defense for sure. And what I will say is one of those questions is I think he can only fight his fight. Again, I don't think he's one of those guys that is able to adapt pretty well. I feel like in order for him to win a fight, it has to be his fight. He's got to fight the way he wants to fight. And some guys they can win either way, no matter which way you slice it. Like we seen it with Shakur Stevenson, kept calling him a runner. You go in there against somebody like a William Zepeda, who's extremely good at pressuring, got some great power in his hands, and he goes in there and he outboxes him, hits him with more power shots. That's somebody who's able to adapt to any type of game plan. You look at a young Floyd Mayweather, he was the same exact way. He could beat you defensively, and he can also whoop you offensively. So there's guys who are able to adapt. I don't think Dubois is that guy. I think he actually has to fight his fight. And like I said, it's going to take a guy who's a good boxer. He's going to take a guy who's going to have success boxing Usyk in order to win. And the question is, there's a lot of questions as to whether or not Dubois is that guy. Struggles with opponents that fight him on the outside, like I mentioned. I will say, when it comes to Oleksandr Usyk, if we go back and we look at that fight, most of the time that a knockdown would happen, or most of the time he would get the advantage on Daniel Dubois, always through the outside. It's not like he was going into the inside, digging in on him and everything like that. It was always on the outside. The other thing about him is I think he struggles against quick combinations. If you look at Usyk, he wasn't throwing anything wild. He wasn't throwing 100 different punches at once. It was a simple 1-2 combination. And because Dubois didn't have him in plain sight, because Dubois didn't have him in range, and because Usyk's so great with footwork, cutting angles, basically just being elusive, Dubois couldn't hit him. And it was like by the time he was done getting hit by that 1-2, Usyk was gone. He was out of range. There was no way you could possibly hit him. And then last but not least, it's the jab. The jab is constantly finding home on Daniel Dubois, and he cannot respond to it too well. And this isn't even Usyk. Go back and look at that fight he had with Joe Joyce, where his eye was swollen shut, and it ended up getting stopped because he couldn't continue no more because his eye was just done. Go back to that fight. I mean, a simple jab was what was really getting him. It's just this, Joe Joyce kept targeting that eye. The jab kept hitting home. And I mean, once that eye keeps getting swollen shut, Once it starts taking that much injury, then you got the sweat going into it. He crumbled. There was nothing he could really do fighting with one eye. But I do think the jab is a big tool in that fight that caused that fight to be stopped and caused that damage to his eye. So I will say the jab, not just even in the Usyk fight, but the Joe Joyce fight, I do believe that jab is a tool that Usyk can use to defeat Dubois a second time. But with that being said, Anthony, I'm gonna ask you. Usually I start off with like the most common fighter or the most well-known fighter, but I'm gonna ask you. Give me three keys first for Daniel Dubois in order for him to upset Oleksandr Usyk and become an undisputed heavyweight champion.
So I think for him, first and foremost, invest to the body and invest early. You got to come with aggression and you got to come with tenacity because, like we said, Usyk maybe can be subject to the body. If you're going to hurt him anywhere, it seems like the body is the best bet. So invest early to the body. I think also the best thing that he can do is be mentally prepared for the fight that Usyk is trying to fight. Don't let him get into a rhythm because once Usyk gets into his rhythm, you're going to be following him. I think as the bigger man, and this is where I think we disagree a little bit, I think to beat an Usyk, I think you have to go and get it. I think you have to be aggressive. You have to be a little wild at times, which is probably not the best idea when you're with Usyk, but I think that's the only way. I don't think he's going to match him skill for skill. I think he actually has to go in there and get it with aggression. I think he's going to be a little bit careless at times if he's going to make Usyk hesitant. And that leads into my third point, make Usyk hesitant. Make him remember that body shot. Even if it was a low blow body shot, make him remember it. Make him cautious of your counters that you're coming to the body. Make him know that he's in a scrappy fight and Usyk's not going to be able to bully him all over the ring.
I respect it. Basically, with all that pressure, you got to risk it. I respect the game plan, and that could be a 50-50. You could end up getting something that you want to like out of a knockout, but you could also end up getting clipped with something you don't, and it's that risk, that he might need to take. For me, I see it opposite. You talked about targeting the body a lot. Be very cautious at how you're going to target the body. Pick your points, and for me, the reason why I say that is because Usyk, I think, remembers what happened last time. He remembers getting dropped by that shot. Whether he in his mind believes whether it's a body shot or a low blow, that's on Usyk, but he remembers it. He remembers how much it hurt. And I do believe that they're going to really stress that body shot, not just Usyk, but the refs as well. Best believe when those two do that little face off in the middle of the ring, they're gonna emphasize what a body shot is. They're going to literally be like, right here, right here is where you're punching. Right here is where you're punching. Anything lower, do not. They're gonna emphasize where that body shot is gonna be, especially after the first fight. Especially even seeing people target Usyk's body, they're gonna expect it. So I would say I do believe that if he tries to go to that body too much, if he basically tries to spam it, I do believe Usyk will find a counter and he will find a game plan for that early. I think he understands that the first place he's going to go to is his body. I will say you're going to need more than that. And I don't think he should focus most of his game plan on that. I do believe he needs to pick those shots and basically catch Usyk off guard. So when Usyk is thinking, oh, he's not really going to my body too much, so I'm going to try something different, that is when Dubois needs to attack. The other thing I will say is in order to beat Oleksandr Usyk, I do believe that he's going to have to make these combos quick. I do believe it can't be pressure, 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 because it could work. I'm not saying it's not going to. It could work, but my problem with that is if it's pressure, 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 he's going to find a way around that, I believe. And I do believe that if you can make it just a two quick combination, I do believe that you could potentially find more success there because you're being just as elusive as him. I do believe he needs to try to pick up whatever Fury and Joshua did. I do believe especially Fury. I do believe he needs to pick up a little bit of what Fury did. And then last but not least, when you find the chance to land those power shots, make it be known. That's where I will agree with you right there. Make him hesitant. I will agree with that one right there. When you hit him with a power shot, hit him clean and let him know if I do that again, I'm getting clipped pretty hard. So force him to take less of a risk, I would say. And so, with that being said, we're going to go to the betting odds. Now, the betting odds for this fight, you would guess the favorite for this fight is Oleksandr Usyk at minus 430. Underdogs Daniel Dubois at plus 300. Then the most likely method to victory is going to be Usyk by actually KO and TKO again. The least likely method to victory besides a draw is going to be Daniel Dubois by points or decision. So, Anthony, first I'm going to ask you who you got winning, how's it going to happen? But the second follow-up I got to that is even if who you have winning is opposite of the betting odds, would you even take a risk at betting Daniel Dubois in this fight, or do you believe there's just no shot of him beating him this second time around?
I think, I know Dubois is coming off some pretty good wins and his momentum's pretty high, but I do have Usyk winning, and I do think it's by late stoppage. I tossed up a unanimous decision because I was debating. I'm like, maybe Dubois is riding the high of some momentum, and he'll come a little bit better. He'll come a little bit more prepared. But I think I have Usyk by late stoppage, and honestly, I wouldn't go the other way. I think Usyk is too proven at this level. To be able to fight back to back when you're talking about big money fights, to be able to beat Anthony Joshua twice and Tyson Fury twice. I mean, that's a big deal. That's a very big deal considering the money that's involved in those fights. He's proven himself at cruiserweight. He's proven himself at heavyweight, and I just don't think there's anyone that can beat him. Especially, I don't know him personally, but it seems like he takes it very serious. He's very dedicated. He's not going to show up to a fight slack. Even though he knows he beat Dubois before, he's still going to show up as if he's fighting 100%, a guy he's never beaten. And I think the discipline, the work ethic, and just the overall skills would make me very, very hesitant, and I wouldn't bet against Usyk.
I got the same winner, but before I get to my prediction, do you got like a specific round you feel like he will stop him at?
I've been throwing around not anywhere between 8 and 10, 8, 9, and 10.
I got Usyk by unanimous decision. Dubois is better than when he fought him the first time. I also do think Usyk's too advanced for Daniel Dubois, but this could be a fight where people aren't going to argue or talk about who won, but they're going to argue about how close it really was. I believe some people are going to see this as a landslide, and others are going to see it as like a 7 rounds to 5 or an 8 rounds to 4. I think that the way this fight's going to go down is I do think Daniel Dubois is going to have some moments. He might clip Usyk with something good. Maybe not rock him or maybe not put him in trouble, but he's going to clip him with something hard. I do believe that he might have 10-second momentums where he could potentially win a couple of rounds, but I think when it's all said and done, this is going to be 10 rounds to 2, 9 rounds to 3, Oleksandr Usyk. I don't think he finishes him a second time. I just think I think you were absolutely right with Usyk being exhausted and basically this taking a toll on him. I can't see him defeating Daniel Dubois by knockout a second time, only for the sole purpose of if Dubois, just by, to me, kind of simplifying it, if Dubois is getting better and Usyk's getting slower, I do expect Dubois to have a little bit more success than he did the last fight. Don't get me wrong, I don't expect a huge body shot to hit him right on the cusp of the bell and drop him for 5 minutes. But I do expect him to have some type of success to the body when he chooses to go there. I do expect him to land a couple power punches or land a couple flurries that might get him the round. But I do believe that Usyk's just too advanced for him. I do believe that footwork's going to cause Daniel Dubois a lot of trouble once again. I do believe Daniel Dubois is going to gas out later on, but I don't think he's going to get knocked out. I think that he'll survive this fight, and then when it's all said and done, we're going to see Usyk get another win. So for me, I got Usyk by unanimous decision. Basically like 9 rounds to 3, 117, 111. So that's what I would have it at. So with that being said, we got to wrap this up. Oleksandr Usyk versus Daniel Dubois 2, Wembley Stadium, undisputed heavyweight championship fight. Anthony, I appreciate you being on this episode. And before we wrap this up, before you go, any type of shout outs or promotions that you want to get out there, feel free.
Definitely. I appreciate you having me. Just a shout out to Big Six Boxing Academy, 816 Douglas Ave, North Providence, Rhode Island. Whether you're an aspiring fighter or you're just trying to look to get in shape, they're not gonna steer you wrong. It's the best gym by far. You've got Jason Estrada, Roland Estrada, his father. They're gonna lead you right, and I would just recommend anyone go check it out. Anyone with any type of interest in boxing.
You heard it from him himself. Now look, hopefully we get Anthony back on this podcast. Now look, this was probably one of the most mellow boxing arguments we've ever had. Between this and Pacquiao, this is probably the most mellow that we've ever had. I need to get him on when it's going to be something controversial. I need to get him on because y'all just weren't in those home rooms, and 20 minutes was not enough. They only gave us 20 minutes to talk about this stuff. 20 minutes was not enough. And trust me, I love boxing. It's my favorite sport of all time. I had to argue with him. I had to argue with a million other kids about a million different sports. But trust me when I tell you, me and Anthony, we did not get enough time to talk about this stuff for 4 years. I wish there was recordings. I wish there were like lost tapes. Actually, some of the stuff I was saying, I wish those tapes stayed lost because I don't need them popping back up again. But overall, nah, it's been great chatting it up with you about boxing. I always felt like out of everybody I know, you are up there as some of the highest knowledge about this sport. Especially, I appreciate you bringing me back into that sport at a time where I was kind of away from it. Only thing I was really watching was like Broner and Deontay Wilder. Then he started talking about Joshua, Tyson Fury, Lomachenko. And overall, I was checking out these names, and slowly but surely, it got me back into the sport. So I appreciate you for that. I didn't know it at the time, but I am grateful for it. And we got to get you back on this podcast again, man.
Man, thank you so much. I'd love to come back on.
And make sure y'all continue to tune into this podcast. If y'all want Anthony back, basically spam it in the comments. But overall, keep on tuning into this podcast. We got more. And make sure y'all continue to follow all of the social media platforms. Make sure y'all continue to subscribe to the podcast and the YouTube channels. And last but not least, make sure y'all stay on point with the Puncher's Point.